Really pleased to have Dan as a member of our team. Dan's been in the business, I'm going to let Rob talk to you here, but Dan's been in the business about 8 years. He's one of the top producers in Santa Barbara, and as far as buyer size, I think he's, we ran that calculation, but it's top 4 or 5, or maybe top 2. So a lot of volume. And Dan, to this point, has been doing this with, I believe, like him and an assistant, to the tune of some $30 million in volume. So really an excellent agent. So I wish you would all please join me in welcoming Dan Zia to our team.
I can't help but think of the term that I've heard so many times, gradually then suddenly. You guys ever heard that? You know, it's kind of how a lot of enterprises have great success. It takes time, and then suddenly you're like, wow, we've got people like Gay, we've got people like Steve, and all these other great agents. Now Dan joins us, and it's like gradually and then suddenly, here we are. And we really have a pool of amazing agents, with all of you included, and Dan's a great addition to that. So I'm so happy to have you here. So, you know, you've only been in the business 8 years, and you're already in the top echelon here in Santa Barbara. So given how you're producing and given how short of a time you've been doing it relative to a lot of agents, I think it's significant and it would be useful to hear about how you started. So how did you start your business?
Well, I guess my business would go right along with that saying, you know, slowly or gradually, and then suddenly. I'm pretty open with my history with real estate. I got into the business when I was 21. So I started at Prudential as an assistant for 2 different agents, Mary Lehman, Yolanda Van Wingerden, excellent agents. And I was 21. I was a senior at Westmont College, so I was still in college doing a full load of classes. I had just gotten married the summer before, so my first year of marriage. And it was, you know, to be the youngest person in office of, you know, 150 agents, including all of the secretaries, and if there was one person that was younger than me, and try to convince people to entrust their finances in my care and their real estate transaction in my care was definitely a challenge. So it wasn't easy, it wasn't quick, it was gradual. I was doing the right things over and over again. I was not the Rookie of the Year my first year, so for those of you that didn't get that award, and to be frank, there was a point in time 2.5 years into the business where through blood, sweat, and tears, you know, we had a very, my wife and I had a very prayerful couple of months just considering, you know, is real estate the right fit? You know, I did 2 transactions my first year, I did 2 transactions my second year, and it seemed like it was just that plateau, and I kept expecting this breakthrough and this success that just didn't seem to come. So we had many conversations, many heart-to-hearts. I think at the time we were probably $50,000 in debt, with the majority of that going into business expenditures, some of that going into living expenses. And at the time, I mean, we would have been 23. Long story short, we just felt peace after lots of prayer that we were supposed to stick with it. And it's a family decision, and it is in no way an individual decision for those of you that have family members. And she was extremely supportive, and we just went all in again, and we kept doing the right things, and it was like that. It was gradually, and then all of a sudden it just happened, and the growth since then has really been exponential.
So you said a number of times the right things. What are they?
The right things. My business is built a little bit differently than I think a lot of real estate agents' business, so I'll just kind of be upfront and candid about that. You know, I think from a business standpoint, I'm an entrepreneur at heart. I started my first company when I was 16, and I ran it through college, and I always have business ideas. It's hard to turn off the flow. And I believe in right business practices. You know, I believe in business ethics. I believe in keeping in touch with people. I believe in a big business and life philosophy for me is adding value to everyone that I know. So if I come across someone I know as agents, I think we're almost programmed when we meet someone new, because we're such in a prospecting mode, to almost see this dollar sign that kind of hovers above their head. And I just, my entire 8 years, my entire career, I fought against that and really looked at it as a practice of each relationship has inherent value. And I want to be a good steward of that relationship. So if I meet someone, I am cognizant of the fact that some of these relationships are going to be a really difficult life experience. It's going to be part of my expensive real estate tuition. Some of these interactions are going to end up in a profitable sale. It's going to be great for business revenue. Some of them I'm just going to pour into them time and time again and never get any financial benefit. Some of them are going to be a great friend. Some of them, there may be some tension afterwards. So I'm just really open to whatever that relationship kind of takes form and fudge. That's part of my business philosophy, and I think that's really important to do kind of again and again. A lot of agents subscribe to prospecting. I know Keller Williams is a proponent of that. There's not many people that are not a proponent of that. I actually honestly don't do a lot of prospecting in the sense where you sit down for an hour or two and make the calls. It's a little bit more organic for me, kind of throughout the day as people come to mind and I reach out. I really focus my connections on, if I'm not adding value, then I shouldn't be talking about real estate. So sometimes it's just, how are you doing? How are the kids doing? How was your holidays? And sincerely asking, not just looking for an opportunity to speak about myself or success or real estate. And then if I do have something specific of value that relates to the market, that relates to their situation, their neighborhood, I would be doing them a disservice if I did not mention that. And they appreciate that because they're not getting 50 emails a year from me. They're getting selected emails where I really think they're of value. And so when they get an email from me, they're looking at it. When they get a call from me, they drop what they're doing and they take the time to interact. And that's been a huge part of my success. One other aspect, which isn't necessarily a business principle, is for me, my relationship is intimately tied with the other aspects of my life. And for me, my faith in God is the preeminent aspect of my life, even above my family, which Rob and others know. I mean, I love my wife and my 18-month-old son so dearly. But for me, I was at this listing appointment in San Diego with a top Keller Williams agent, and I was representing my wife's grandfather's estate, and they were selling his home. He was in a home and wasn't mentally able to do that, so I was interviewing 4 different listing agents, and on the first side, I was on the other side of the table. And it was interesting because the Keller Williams agent had a really polished presentation, very successful agent, and he said he gave 3 Ps, and I forgot what the P's were, but essentially one of them was saying that most people, they put in the MLS, they stick the for sale sign in the yard, and they pray, and he viewed that as this bad thing. And if obviously I'm a businessman, and I think we need to do more than just pray for the listing to sell. I think there are tangible steps that we need to be good stewards and make sure that we're leaving no stone unturned. But for me personally, my business has been built on prayer. And those first 2.5 years where I did all I could in the day, and there still was extra hours in the day, I would walk neighborhoods and pray for people and pray for their just blessings on their family and opportunities to meet them. So that's just me personally, but that's something that I do routinely. All my transactions, all my clients, whether they know it or want it, I don't necessarily talk about it with all my clients, but for those that are open, I'm more than happy to share.
And
it's long-winded, I know. But
no, it's not long-winded at all. It's great. I think it's a great way for us to get to know you, and everyone operates in a different way. Some people connect on sports, some people connect on family and faith, some people are all business, and so it's you are a combination of some of those things. So let me take it back to the dollar signs for a second, okay? Get us a little bit more specific inside the engine of your business in terms of how you turn those relationships, regardless of how often you communicate and what you communicate and how you communicate, how you turn the people that you're in relationship with into business.
Well, like Parker mentioned, I do represent numerous buyers in town. A lot of times I represent more buyers than any other agent, and that's, to be honest, that hasn't been, it wasn't all intentional. In fact, when the market was declining, here I am, I'm a 21-year-old, I'm new to Santa Barbara, other than my time at the Westmont, which was a little bit insulated, to be honest, and I didn't have a sphere of influence, and I had to find new ways to find clients. So what I did is, I had my previous company, I sold aftermarket car parts of all things. So if you've seen those Fast and Furious movies or heard of them. That was my market, that was my segment, that's what I targeted, but I sold them in 4 different countries, sold them online, and I learned about the online consumer. So when I went into the business, I looked at my value proposition. What was my value proposition? What did I bring to the table that other agents wouldn't? And one of the ways that I added value that I communicate to other agents is technology. So I learned a lot about the online consumer, how to form relationships with people, how to build that rapport and that trust, where I've had clients who they met me through my website, and before ever meeting them face to face, they bought properties sight unseen through me, and it's through that process of building trust. So, long story short, my website and my online presence does generate about 40% of my business. So that is from social media to blogging to my website. That is an integral part of my business.
And do you pay for any online leads?
Good question.
Do you do any of the abouthouse.coms or the...
I have used probably all of those services. I believe in giving them a fair trial. So I've used most of them for at least 6 to 12 months. And I currently don't use any of them. Part of it is because I've gotten to a place where we get so many online leads that we're focusing on better conversion of those prospects and clients versus just increasing the funnel. So both are important, but we were for a few years just focusing all on increasing the funnel, and now we're on really the conversion of those.
So let me talk to you about conversion. That's a great segue. So you're getting 40% of your business. How many units did you close last year?
41.
Okay, so approximately 18, 16 deals or so sides came through your internet, right? To get those 16 deals, how many internet inquiries do you think you got? Let's kind of boil it down.
Yeah, and that would be from all different aspects, from social media, everything all together. It's about 1 in 20. So it's a lot like fishing. This is not necessarily it's not a referral where you're going to convert 50%. It's you're going to get 20, and I might establish good relationships with 12 of them where they become, I'd say, secure them as clients. But from that, a lot of them, frankly, from the internet, they're international. They're looking for second homes. They're looking all over the Central Coast or all over the California coast. So a lot of them just end up not buying or selling in our area. So it's, I convert, say, over 50% as a client relationship, and then it works out to be about 5% as a closed sale. And a lot of those, I know one of them that bought a $2.6 million house on Pedregosa up here, and that was after 4.5 years of actively looking at everything on the market, for 4.5 years actively following up. So it's a long-term proposition. It's not fits and spurts. You do get a few of them that come into town the first time and buy something, but those are the rare ones.
Most of it's relationship building.
It is, and we, most of them, when we get a new lead, we do set them on kind of a drip campaign, so they get 6 or 7 emails over the course of 45 days to try to establish that relationship. And again, it's a little bit like fishing. So as soon as we get that first real-life response, then interacting back, I step fully in, and it's all custom, individual, and all one-on-one meets to them. Where before that, my assistant does much of the initial fishing. So he's baiting the hook, he's throwing it in the water, and then as soon as he gets it, he's handing the rod to me, and I'm, I believe, in making that relationship work.
And what's the criteria if you have a set one, or maybe it's more intuitive, in terms of who you go, like, all right, that one we're throwing in the boat, and that one we're letting go back? What's your criteria for that?
I let very few go back. I believe, and I'll follow up with the lead until they tell me to take them off their list, or they tell me they've bought them with another agent. If they've bought them with another agent, I usually keep them in my database, and I just have a little top producer category that says, represented by another agent, and I wish them the best. I really make sure that regardless of how it ends well, and it's very respectful.
Kind of transitioning a little bit, although it's not unrelated. I'm sure many people know, and I've known in the couple, I guess about 3 years we've probably known each other. Is that about right? Is it 2?
It feels like long right now. I wear on people, but I think I do too.
Okay. So, but I know that you've had at least 3 or 4 years now where you've been nominated by one of the local press in terms of one of the top realtors or that top realtor in the city. How did that come about? How do you maintain that? What's the impetus for that?
I think a lot of that is reflective of that business and life philosophy of focusing on adding value rather than being a real estate salesperson. And so when it comes time, and the only thing that I actively do for that is once a year, usually a couple of weeks before the independent comes out and they're voting. I send one email to everyone in my contact list, and I just say the voting's coming up. This is a really great resource for those of us that live in Santa Barbara. I mean, I look highly at what are the top restaurants, top moving companies. I really place a lot of value, so I just simply encourage them to vote for any categories. And that's because kind of for a lot of us, if we weren't watching for when that voting came out, we just wouldn't be aware of it. So that's the one thing I do. And then it's just mine. It's in God's hands, and a lot of time, my clientele, the people in my sphere of influence, I've added a lot of value, and a lot of them haven't, had an opportunity to use me to buy or sell yet. So they want to find a way to give back, and they know that that's one way that they give back and recognize that service that I've offered.
Well, if I can actually make a gratuitous plug for you at this point. How many of you have ever heard of the 30 Under 30, Realtor Magazine? So nationally, they look at the top 30 agents around the country who are under the age of 30, which Dan still is. And so he's going to be in the running for that honor. And I don't know yet, so this is kind of partially a question. But if there's a way that everyone in the office can help make that occur, let us know. We'll, I know Parker and I have written what we need to do for the magazine, but if there's a thing those other people can do, we'll make it happen. So it would be not only good for you, but good for our company and good for all of us to have someone with that acknowledgement, right?
Well, thank you. Well, one of the things that I've been really overwhelmed by show of support. Whenever you're making a change from a great company like Prudential to a phenomenal company like Keller Williams, you always have a little bit of trepidation. Is everything you expect going to come true? And one of just only being a few weeks into it now, one of the things that I have found to be true is for the first time I really feel like I have people that are supporting my goals. So Rob, Parker, you've been excellent. When he means that I'm in the running for it, I'm just submitting an application. So they have not screened the first round or anything else. So I have no idea if something's going to develop. If it does, great. But it is my last year. I turned 29 in a few days, and it's my last year. So I'm gonna give it a swing. But I emailed Parker to ask for a letter of recommendation, and without even asking, he forwarded it to Rob, who not only offered to write a letter of recommendation, but he forwarded it to, the Director of Marketing?
Director of Marketing for
Keller Williams International, and she's emailing back and giving input as far as, not only has Keller Williams agents been the forerunner as far as the most agents of any company kind of year after year in this award, but she's saying this is really what they've been looking for, and this is kind of what they emphasize. I'm happy to review your application. So it's been a really kind of overwhelming show of support, and just a wonderful confirmation for what I knew to be true. So as far as things that you can do, obviously if I get into, I think they narrow it down to 50. If I get there and you feel,
So once we get there, then they can vote.
Then they can vote. Up until then, it's just, they're screening hundreds of applicants and making some initial selections.
Good. Well, we'll hopefully you'll get to that 50 spots, and we can wield our influence here. So a good transition again. Why Hidden? Why are you here?
Well, kind of going back to your gradually, then suddenly comment. When I was first getting into the business and I was an assistant, I was studying to get my license, I read the Red Book, the Millionaire Real Estate Agent book. Back then I was a little bit more proactive in reading business books, and it was an excellent book. The things that stuck out at me is how to run, how to be a real estate agent and run it like a company, a business, rather than a job. And it broke down the numbers and training and staff and branding, all of those great things. But the other thing that really stuck out to me and that has resonated for all of these years since has been Keller Williams, their principles. What the company was founded on, both for me personally, I resonated with some of the key members and their original faith, but also just a win-win or no deal, and just that whole list of Keller Williams ideals that I subscribe to personally. So when looking around for a company that I was in line with, it was immediately clear. I was with Prudential at the time. They kind of showed me the ropes, so to speak. And then a couple years ago, I was introduced to Rob, had a great first impression. I do kind of analysis every year of, I have a broker's license, should I go out on my own? Do I find value in a company? What company should I align myself with? And at the time, I didn't feel like it was the right fit. And then fast forward just a couple months from now, and a couple months passed, and I just, out of the blue, I just felt, you know what? I met Parker at an open house. He was touring with some other agent for a broker's caravan. And I had literally a 15-second handshake, hi, nice to meet you. And I just had a positive impression. I said, you know what, nothing else, I just like to take him for lunch, and of course he wouldn't let me pay. But
why dude? We gotta watch the budget.
But
by the way, Dan, I was stalking you. I'll be clear. It wasn't a random visit.
But I just wanted to get to know him. I think you all know he kind of exudes that presence of real estate business aside, a good person that you'd like to get to know and have in your life. So met with him, we got to know each other a little bit, and I just said, you know, this is a good opportunity for me to re-explore aspects of the business. Prudential is going through a big transition, like I'm sure a lot of you have heard or are aware of. They're going to be changing their name and doing some other things with that. So if I was going to be put through a transition anyway, it was a good time for me to really come to some of those hard decisions and make some conclusions. So I think a little bit to Parker and Rob and Paul's frustration, though they were infinitely patient, I am a very slow decision maker. I take more time than I think most business owners in thinking about things. I get counsel from friends, family members, business people that I look up to. I cover a lot of it in prayer, and so my wife and I just waited. We liked everything that we heard, but we were still split 50-50 about, again, I had a really good setup with Prudential or switching over. And we both woke up one morning independently. We were in separate parts of the house, just kind of praying and spending some time with God. And we both just had a feeling that Keller Williams was the right place, that it was poised really well for not just national and international growth, it was poised really well for local growth, and it was the place where my business was going to be taken to the next level. I haven't read the book Good to Great, but I know that the overarching principle is, you know, the worst enemy of a great company is a good company. You get to this plateau of being good, and you're afraid to take risks, you're afraid to change things up, and I think that's what it was. I had a really good thing at Prudential, and enough about respect for the company, but I truly feel like Keller Williams is going to help me take my business to the next level, and the last 2 months have been really intense. I have taken everything off the table, worked back to my foundation. I'm making major changes in my life, my business, my marriage, and it's just, in a lot of ways, my production has been put on hold because I believe that I'm going to build a new foundation for the next dramatic growth in my business. I'm really excited to see that and to share that with this great office.
Awesome. That's a great way to end and open it up to some questions. Anyone have any questions for Dan?
Wendy.
Yes, Wendy.
Hi Dan. So welcome.
Thank you.
You work with a lot of buyers.
I do.
So do you have them sign a buyer-broker agreement?
It's like $1 million question, right?
Don't you think?
That's going to be tough. I have gone back and forth on that. I do not have my clients sign a buyer broker's agreement. I am intentional in having the conversation. I believe that there should be a period of time where I demonstrate my competence and expertise, and they know whether or not they want to work with me. So after 30 or 45 days, nothing's set in stone, but I work into the conversation via email, phone, in person. This is how I get paid. I do only work exclusively with clients. I will not work with them if they're using other agents. And I would respect that same reciprocity because I only get paid. So I'm going to offer them service. I'm going to offer them neutral counsel. I will never steer them to or away for a house for my own means. I will abide by that fiduciary responsibility. But if and when the time comes, whether 2 weeks, 2 years, 20 years, that they respect that and offer it. I will say it doesn't always work out. I had a client who I literally was working for 3.5 years, great relationship, but a very difficult client. And for a variety of reasons, they got so frustrated they weren't able to find this really difficult profile of property. They started talking with other agents, thinking different offices have different pocket listings and things like that. And they bought a house just a little bit ago for $1.6 million. And it was a house that I actually had emailed them and highlighted to them. They chose to use Goodwin and Time because they were motivated by that 1% commission credit.
That's
and
right.
3.5 years of friendship and relationship. What I look at is that is more a reflection on them than on me, and I'm not going to let that impact my business. But there's also times where other agents are working with clients for a couple of years and they have not offered good service. I just met someone the other day, and after 2 hours of just talking about real estate and giving them counsel, there were specific points that the agent had never talked to them about, really basic points. They were a foreign buyer, had no concept of all these issues. And so I will, if they want my representation, I will pursue that with them because I don't feel like they're being well served. So,
Yeah.
If I would like to just comment on that really quick for you, Wendy. You know, I know like Susan Rose, if you take any of her classes, our productivity coach, she talks a lot about using that buyer-broker agreement, and I think it's a great thing to use. You know, probably even more so in LA than here.
give me my flashcard. I don't.
Because there's so much, there's so much activity. There's so many more thousands of agents there, so there's more likelihood of people, you know, not being loyal. One of the things that I did as an agent that I'm happy to share with any of you, Parker, you might already have what I'm about to talk about, but I created a thing called a buyer loyalty agreement when I was an agent, which is a completely non-legally binding agreement, but it basically does what Dan was saying he says, and that is you just go, look, this is a non-binding agreement, but it's just a commitment that here's the 10 things I'm committed to doing for you to service you on your purchase, or sale, I guess, but you know, purchase more likely. And the only thing I expect from you is your loyalty. If you're going to work with another agent, you know, let me know so I'm not wasting my time, essentially. So it's basically exactly what he said, but by just having them read it and acknowledge it with an initial, there's something more like firm about it in their mind. So yeah, so it's something to think about. You know, obviously you guys can have to run your business the way you want to, but
let me revise my answer, Wendy. I'm going to be.
Well, look, I mean, I'll we'll end with, or on that point with, the fact is though that he has that conversation, and I can remember there are times when you get working with a client and you forget to have that conversation. It's just not part of the script, and then all of a sudden they are working with someone else, and I mean, really, or you encounter someone that comes to you and they just don't know how brokerage works. We think because we're in real estate, everyone knows how it works and that I paid on commission, but we just never have that conversation. So, you know, I think Dan measures and has a conversation. You know, Rob would have a piece of paper that reminded him to have that conversation and share that with the client. And then there's other levels also. But I think the key is, even if you talk to Susan Rose, in order to have someone sign that, you can't just meet them and have them sign it. Not going to work.
You got to explain it and justify it.
Yeah, you explain it and you got to show them value.
Exactly, you got to show them value. And then I will say that there's something about having the piece of paper, from my perspective, that felt professional. Meaning you're like, okay, like, you know, you go to the doctor's office, they take your insurance card, they go through the checklist to check your heart rate and whatever they do, and there's this step, these professional steps that they take every time you go to the doctor. And so for me, as an agent, it was just part of the professional steps. Like, okay, now I've told you what I'm going to do, I know what you want and need, and here's how I work, can you please sign this? And I had maybe, you know, 10% of the people who wouldn't sign it. And the people who signed it, I never had them use someone else.
Okay.
I was going to ask Daniel how he handles loyalty in the reverse. For instance, you work with a lot of buyers.
Yeah.
What happens, well, you know what I'm going to ask. What happens when you have two, maybe even three sets of buyers, and now our inventory is decreasing, and demand is getting higher? What do you do when you have more than one buyer that want to make an offer on the same property?
Well, I cringe responding to that because it's the broker asking me, so I.
Well, no,
and this is being recorded, literally.
Exactly the same way you do in terms of asking for loyalty. I don't ask for it right away. I say, work with me first, see how I work, what I do, and then I let them know they have to make a decision. So, of course, they would expect loyalty from me as well. And I have gotten into that conflict a couple of times and handled it a couple different ways, and it's really uncomfortable.
It is. It's
uncomfortable.
terrible. Yeah, I hate the feeling. Granted, in some aspect, your percentages of converting that listing to a sale, you know, does go up. But I would rather never have that conflict. I will say, even with all the buyers that I represent, I think it's happened in 8 years, 2 or 3 times. When clients ask how I handle that issue, I've handled it a couple different ways depending on the situation, depending on where I was at with my I guess how I was handling the issue. So there are some cases where, depending on the situation, I will disclose to both buyers that I have multiple buyers placing offers for the property. And again, it's a rare occurrence, but in that case, I leave them up to them. I can bring in another agent to represent one of them, but then it gets a little bit sticky because which one do I represent? Is it the first one? Is it the one I'm closest to? Is it the one that has the greatest likelihood to convert? So I've wrestled with that issue, and when talking about that issue with some clients, I've had clients where our relationship is almost broken down over this issue because I've had 2 clients that want the same property, and they feel like I remember I lost one client because they thought that I was looking to buy a house in the same price range that they would. They thought that I was going to be competition, even though when it comes down to it is, even if you have 2 buyers looking for a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house under $550, the nuances of what they both like and appeal to usually are just so different, when it comes down to it, they rarely want the same property. The other times that I've done is I've actually not told either buyer that that I am representing more than one buyer. So I'll say if I have 2 buyers placing an offer property, I will say there is another offer that's coming in on the property. I've been talking with the listing agent, so you need to be aware of that we're in a multiple offer situation. And I will strategically, regardless of my relationship with the client, I will offer them the exact same advice. This is the market analysis. This is what I think the value is. Statistically, with this many offers, this is what we see it tend to go over asking price. And I tell them both the same thing. And you'd think both of them would, come in around the same price. As you know, each agent has their own, or each buyer has their own response to our counsel. So, and I've had times where close friends have missed out on a property over a client that I just met because they both are the same counsel, but their situation was different. And in virtually every single case, it's worked out for good. It's amazing. If they miss out on a property, almost every single time there's a better property for them, or in hindsight, it wasn't the right time to buy. So I have confidence that it's going to work out.
We'll take one more quick question, and because we're running a little bit over here, and then we'll wrap it up. Patrice?
What was the turning point from your slow first years to getting busy? Was it something you changed that you weren't doing?
Wouldn't that be nice if there was that magic bullet and did this and
Everyone's got their pens ready.
To be honest, I did absolutely nothing different. It was the exact same things every day. It was, I'm going to work these business hours, and whether I have all of these escrows to service or I'm doing business development for 8 hours a day, I am making that commitment that I am going to put in the time. I'm going to do the right thing. I'm going to treat people the right way. I'm going to focus on the relationship and not on the commission. And over time, that just went to happen. And it wasn't, it was exponential to grow that 2.5-year mark. It was 2 sales, 7 sales, and it just kind of went up from there. Last year I think I did 34, and it's been a great pie chart. It's not always going to go up, it may, but there's no magic bullet, unfortunately. If I find one, I'll let's see.
I think that's I'll answer that question from what I know in our training.
Wait, you listen to Parker and Rob. That's the magic bullet.
In Keller Williams, it isn't the one thing you do that turns it around. It's the fact that he's been doing something for several years, consistently, and then all of a sudden it catches up. So that's really the magic. Is that it's kind of like working out. You can't lift 1,000 pounds right away, but if you keep working out every day or do 100 push-ups or whatever it is, you build that muscle. So Dan, thank you very much. We look forward to seeing you.